100 illness-causing germs. Dettol soap is endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association. Be Dettol sure.
With Betano and get a welcome bonus up to 200,000 naira. Betano, the official sponsor of UEFA Euro 2024.
Hello and thank you for joining us on Newsweek, where we highlight some of the biggest stories that made the headlines recently. I am Mark Otabo. This week, federal government offers 62,000 naira as new minimum wage. Labour demands 250,000 naira. Also, court orders forfeiture of fresh 11.14 billion naira properties linked to Godwin Emefiele. Later on the show, tribunal orders Multichoice to give Nigerians 1 month free subscription. All the details in a moment. Stay with us. We'll begin with the minimum wage conundrum. The federal government and the organized private sector have increased their offer for the new minimum wage to 62,000 naira from the earlier 60,000 naira. However, the organized labor isn't on the same page, as it is proposing 250,000 naira, a sizable reduction from its earlier 494,000. This brings to an end the deliberations on the new minimum wage by the tripartite committee set up by the federal government after several months. The recommendations will be forwarded to President Tinubu, who is expected to send an executive bill to the National Assembly for legislative action. With the work of the tripartite committee, which was constituted in January this year, coming to an end, the ball now shifts to the table of President Tinubu and subsequently that of the National Assembly. And of course, to discuss this with us is Ayodele Adio. He's a communications strategist and policy analyst via Zoom. Ayodele, good evening, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Good evening.
All right. In the studio here with me, I also have Olufemi Lawson. He's the Executive Director, Center for Public Accountability. Olufemi, good to have you on the show this evening.
Good to be here, Mr.
Fantastic. All right, Adele, I'm going to start with you quickly. Now, do you think this debacle would ever be conclusive with the way the negotiations are going?
Well, I think it's now become a contest of who blinks first. And that doesn't help either party, right? I think that there needs to be some pragmatism that comes to this negotiation, some transparency on both sides, and a bit of data that is branded by both sides of the debate so that we can have a reasonable conclusion to these negotiations. But I think that the biggest elephant in the room here is the fact that the federal government, and it didn't just start a year ago, I think over the last 2 decades, has failed in the ability to provide public services that insulates the average worker from the pressures of either inflation or growing economic instability. And I'm talking about the ability for the government to provide quality public schools, to provide affordable power supply, to provide cheap public transportation, to provide adequate social housing, to provide public health services. Now, the inability or the failure of government to be able to provide these services over the years has created a situation where, the average Nigerian worker has to pay over the counter for all of these services at almost a premium. And so it's made this negotiation very difficult, especially at a time where inflation is record high and food inflation is hovering over 40%, which means that the average household income, is being decimated by the cost of food and transportation, both of which takes over 70% of the household income. So the question the Labour will be asking, and as well as many other Nigerians, is how their wages fares in the market square. And the reality is, 60,000 naira doesn't take them far enough. It would have been a strong negotiation point for the government if it promised to provide, and there's evidence to provide many of all these other social services, that keeps monies in the pockets of this labor and they do not have to spend over the counters. And like I said, if the cost of public transportation is cheap, if the prices of food can come down drastically, if they have access to quality public health services, and of course they have access to social housing, then this debate will be more nuanced and you will not have this back and forth, that we're having at the moment. Unfortunately, it's going to linger because there's a great differential between the earnings of those who are negotiating on behalf of the federal government and the labor union.
All right, man. Idle is saying that if all those social services could actually come down, maybe this would have been a strong point. But I just want to take you up on this. Governors are kicking against the proposed minimum wage, citing their inability to meet up with that demand. Are they justified with this position?
And I think why governors are kicking against the proposed minimum wage is basically because they do not actually understand where they should direct their energies towards. In the first place, there shouldn't have been any debate around the national minimum wage. What the governors, I think, should be fighting, rather than debating the ability to pay 62,000 minimum wage or not, is for us, for the federal government, to hands off the business of negotiating minimum wage for as a national or as an exclusive least responsibility.
Okay.
I would have expected governors to be more focused on addressing the question of Section 4 of our Constitution, because I would not expect the governor of Lagos State or Rivers State or Delta State to join the governor of Zamfara, Ekiti, or a state like Yobe in discussing 62,000 naira not being payable.
Okay.
But it is so because today, federal government is negotiating minimum wage on behalf of states, on behalf of the private sector, in a state, in a country that claims to be practicing, that the true federalism rather, but not in the true sense of it. I think the foundation is that the federal government is carrying a body that does not actually belong to it, and today it is now the state who should, in their capacity, on the basis of their productivity, on the basis of their resources, be negotiating wages at their state level that are, following committees set up by the federal government to. It's shameful, really, for Lagos State, for example, or a state like Rivers, to be discussing 62,000 minimum wage, while states like Yobe, Zamfara, Ekiti, or lowest, are discussing same. So I think the issue is not even because the federal government is not subsidizing basic social amenities enough. The truth is that the federal government, in my opinion, have no business carrying this body of negotiating a national minimum wage.
Okay, that's your position. Ayodele, very quickly, I want to take you up on your initial position. You did say that if social services can come down to the barest minimum, then there's a possibility that this might be a very strong case for the government to handle. So are you saying if the government can promise a stipulated time to bring down the cost of food and several other social stuff, do you think they might have a case to negotiate with Labour then?
Well, it's no longer about promises, because promises have been broken by several governments over the years. There needs to be a deliberate approach to tackle many of these social issues, right? Inflation has been raging over the last 1 year, and there seems to be no deliberate effort in sight to bring down the cost of food across the country. So how do you negotiate effectively with a promise when the evidence doesn't suggest that enough work is being done to decisively deal with the prices of food in the marketplace? So there has to be a lot of demonstrable effort on the side of the government to show that its budget provisions are geared towards spending towards social services that enrich the lives of the average Nigerian.
All right, let me take you on this very quickly. In a few seconds now, quickly, The government is currently battling with inflation and striving so hard to stabilize the economy. Now, why aren't these factors considered by the organized labor while pushing for a new minimum wage?
Well, honestly, I think you're better off asking the labor unions to defend that position. But really and truly, the labor unions are really not responsible for the inflation, really and truly. It's government actions or inactions over the years that has brought us to this economic mess that we found ourselves in. And so there has to be a collaborative effort to find ourselves out of it. And that's why I believe that on both sides.
Okay, let me get your thoughts on this quickly. Now, we understand that things are not looking very good at the moment, but why is organized labor not also understanding that this can happen overnight? Why are they not also including this to push for what they're pushing for?
Of course, as much as things are not looking very good for the country, the truth is that we are all victims, and the Nigerian workers are also, mostly affected, not just in the public sector, even in the private sector. Okay. So whatever consideration must be given would not come from the side of the Nigerian workers alone. There must also be sacrifices on the part of people in government. Okay. Government is not behaving enough in a manner that suggests that it is ready to also make sacrifices, especially when you look at issues around public spending by government in Nigeria.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we'll take a time out now, and of course, Newsweek continues in a moment. Stay with us.
Voted as the best TV station of the year. TVC News breaks into the core of every event as they happen. Following all nationwide big and impactful stories. We tell the news from every perspective, covering every human angle. I am Veronica, bringing you the news you would want to watch.
Welcome back. Now, this week, the woes of former Central Bank of Nigeria CBN Governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, continued. A federal high court in Lagos granted an order for the interim forfeiture of property valued at 11.14 billion, allegedly linked to Emefiele. Trial Judge Justice Chukwujeku Aneke granted the order following an ex parte application filed and argued by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission EFCC counsel, Mr. Rotimi Oyedepo-San. The court's order mandates the interim forfeiture of the property to the federal government. Oyedepo informed the court that Emefiele was suspected of purchasing the high-value property primarily located in upscale areas of the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, by proxy using proceeds from fraud. Justice Aneke has ordered the EFCC to publish the forfeiture order in a newspaper to allow any interested party or parties to present reasons why a final forfeiture order should not be issued. And of course, Ayodele Adu is still right here with me, and of course, Olufemi Lawson. I want to get your reactions to this very quickly. Now, with this recent development and this new investigation that just came out, ordering a forfeiture of assets worth 11.14 billion naira, how did you react? What's your reaction to this?
It's alarming.
Okay.
And it's alarming, and I think more of these revelations are still going to come, especially when you look at how people who are entrusted with responsibility of holding Commonwealth in trust on behalf of the people would descend, to the level of practically, amassing what ordinarily belongs to the Nigerian people to themselves, using proxies, using family members. And it's very worrisome. And this is we are just at the early stage of these revelations. Because if we look at what went on the ground in the period of about 8 years that Emefiele was the CBN governor, they are so alarming to the extent that I do hope that the damage it has done to our economy would be such that we can recover from in the earliest possible time. This is very impressive that the EFCC is not relenting, not limiting the scope of its investigation on the activities of the former CBN governor. Now a lot have been unraveled, and we do hope that beyond acquisition of properties and some of these, assets that have been forfeited, more about how resources were taken by people connected to Emefiele or others who served in that administration would also be unraveled.
All right, Ayodele Adio, very quickly. Now, the pile of allegations leveled against this man through investigation showed he had absolute autonomy to do what he liked. Should we be worried with how weak the system has been?
I mean, obviously, you should be worried that a public servant of that standing could have, according to what is being argued in court, made away with 11 billion worth of property. And this, like Mr. Lawson rightfully said, is just the tip of the iceberg of the several revelations that have been made public as the investigation continues to unfold and as the court proceedings continue. So it just shows the lack of institutional discipline and the fact that there's so much porosity with many of our public institutions, and the fact that senior public servants can simply make away with billions of not just naira, in some instances millions of dollars. It's just scandalous. It's scary. But I'm not willing to invest so much of my emotions on it now. I just like to wait out and see where this entire case leads to. Okay. And I just hope that due diligence is done in this prosecution to not just bring justice to the matter, but at least so that the Nigerian people that have lost our commonwealth, can have a bit of closure.
All right, thank you. Well, he said he doesn't want to invest too much emotions on it, but we keep going around in circles. Now, is this a function of a society or a structure that has not been able to prosecute those who have been caught in similar situations like this, and that is why those in public office still also have the feeling that, look, I can do what I like, and after all, we'll go to court and we might win or not win?
It's a function of the level of disciplinary measure that we have given to corruption in Nigeria. Right. Today, Emefiele is a free man on bail. He feels he can hire the best of lawyers to prosecute his case. The federal government will spend a lot of resources prosecuting Emefiele. Emefiele may end up with few years in jail or options of fine, like we have seen in different cases in this country where people are accused, found guilty of stealing billions. They are sentenced to a few months in jail. And of course, in some cases, they are given options of ridiculous amount as fine. Until we make this issue of corruption so punitive to the extent that people will see it as a matter of, national, a matter of threat to our existence as a people, until it becomes so capital in nature that people would really feel it is very extremely dangerous to be involved
in such an act.
This may just end up like one of those corruption cases that have been treated by the anti-corruption agencies in Nigeria.
All right, let's head on to the final story for the day. Now, the Competition and Consumer Protection Tribunal, CCPT, sitting in Abuja, has awarded a fine of 150 million naira against Multichoice Nigeria Limited for disrespecting its jurisdiction by flouting its order. The tribunal, in a unanimous decision by its three-member panel, equally ordered Multichoice to provide Nigerians with a 1-month free subscription on its DSTV and GoTV services. The Saratu Shafi-led tribunal made the orders following an ex parte motion that was filed on behalf of Multichoice subscribers by a legal practitioner, Festus Onifade. The tribunal subsequently fixed July 3rd to hear the substantive action that was instituted against the company. And of course, I see I have Ayodele right here with me on the show. Ayodele, very quickly, I think it's important we get down to the bottom of this. Now, Multichoice was told to suspend a hike for now, but went ahead to enforce the hike, disobeying court order in a country where they're serving customers. I mean, what's your reaction to this?
To be honest, I'm not even sure why this was a subject of litigation in the first instance. I'm not sure that you sue the person who owns the grocery store down the corner of your house that he's increased the price of bread or he's increased the price of soda. So I cannot understand, for the love of God, why this is a subject of litigation, why a private company has no right to adjust the prices of its offerings, especially at a time where its costs, whether overheads, and other component costs, has drastically increased, just like how the cost of business has gone up for every other business venture. So listen, it's either we want a market-led economy or we want some sort of, socialist influence where government has to determine the prices of goods and services across the country, which for me, in my opinion, is a bit retrogressive and disincentivizes investments in the economy that require growth and job creation. So for me, I'm not sure what this is about, because I'm hearing that the ruling says that they should give 1 month free subscription to customers. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. This is a private company. It has the right to push prices upwards or downwards, giving t-shirt the marketplace. And it's the choice that the consumer has whether to patronize that product or seek an alternative. I'm not sure why this is really and truly a subject of litigation.
Okay, now, I understand where your standpoint is, but we're looking at a situation here where a private company, shouldn't they follow due process? We're not saying don't increase your price tariff, but at least follow due process, give some ahead notice before you enforce the price. They enforce the price against the ruling of the tribunal, which I find very, very disrespectful to a country you're doing business in. If you're a private business, should you go out with your line and just do what you like? Is that what you're implying?
Again, I'm saying that I do not understand why, in the first instance, it became a subject of litigation. That's even before going to whether or not a certain court order was disregarded. Because like I rightfully said, I'm not sure the grocery store down your road gave you a notice to increase the price of bread or milk. You woke up one morning, went to the supermarket, and the cost of bread had increased. The price of milk had gone up. Right. The price of petrol has gone up. So, I mean, we can't say people whose operational expenses have risen should have no rights to increase prices. This is why I said in the first instance, I don't understand why it became a subject of litigation. And now you can argue that, why have they disregarded the court order? That's a different argument entirely. The argument I am making is that in a free market economy, organizations have the right, especially when they are not price gouging, to increase the prices of goods and service, especially when inflation has hit over 30%.
Okay.
And the consumer, like you and I, have a right, to watch what services they are rendering or not.
All right.
And that's how market economies work.
All right, Mr. Olufemi, quickly. Now, do you think Multichoice is leveraging on lack of competitors to behave this way? And of course, what should the government do in earnest to actually arrest the situation right now?
Well, I want to align with Mr. Adele to a very reasonable extent.
Okay.
Of course, disobedience to any lawful order, I'm opposed to it. It's condemnable, and I want to hold Multichoice responsible for, irrespective of where the order and when it was given.
Okay.
A lawful order must be respected. But on the other hand, I think it's a misdirection of energy for us to go to tribunal, to go to court, to challenge increase in tariff by Multichoice. Today, even institutions of government have increased tariffs. Tertiary institutions in Nigeria have increased fee payable by students. Today, electricity company that are even subsidized by government increases tariff almost on a daily basis. A lot of private, today from 4,600 we're buying cement at about 8,000 something in this country. Nobody has gone to court. I think that the cost of cable TV should be one of the least of our problems. And I think we need to begin to direct our energy into the right direction as Nigerians. For me, I think it's a misdirection of energy. But as government, moving forward, beyond Multichoice, there must be pricing, control. The system lacks price control mechanisms. The state is looking as if it's not concerned about regulating prices. And people have gone to court on this matter. On a number of course, the private business operators have right to determine their prices, the price of their goods and services. But there must be regulation. Okay. There must be control mechanisms which the government must play a role in ensuring its effectiveness. And that's why the government must not just see this as one of those, issues that it doesn't have business in. Okay. This is a call on government to see the need for that price control, institution to be made effective in the country. All right,
Ayodele, very quickly before we finally run away, in a few seconds, I'm still holding on to my own motion saying, even if you have to increase price, don't you think there should be due process in making it happen? And not just waking up and saying you want to hike your price.
Why are you frustrated about cable television? It's not an essential service. The cost of prescription drugs across your country has quadrupled. People can't afford antibiotics. People can't afford hypertension drugs that they need to survive.
Right.
That's where your energy should be going. It's not, cable TV is not an essential service. Listen, even before this price increase, over 60% of Nigerians are not using cable TV. So, I mean, it's just, for me, it's a misadventure, if you'd asked me.
Okay.
Right? To deal with the other fundamentals in our macroeconomic situation than chasing, a cable TV that, between the both of us, if we talk after now, when was the last time you and I subscribed? Let's call it spade what it is.
Ayodele, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate you. Of course, I've been speaking with Ayodele Adio, communication strategist and policy analyst via Zoom. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
All right, of course. With me here also, Olufemi Lawson, Executive Director, Center for Public Accountability. Thank you so much for granting us your time as well. All right, and of course, that's our show for today. Remember, you can follow the conversation on our social media platforms at TVC News NG or on our website at tvcnews.tv. I am Marco Tabo. Until next week, goodbye.